Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Show. And today we're going to get into some discussion on the old man strength that is out there and available to you at the running back position. Now, the Birdhouse Dynasty Show is, of course, brought to you by Choice Sports Cards, your number one choice in buying and selling your favorite sports cards. Go check out Kyle and the boys over on Whatnot. Doing a great job over there. All right. So we use the latest FFPC live draft info. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the FFPC, that is the Fantasy Football Players Championship held every year out in Vegas. It's the highest stakes in fantasy football you can find. It's a redraft format. Teams are minimum $2,000 to enter into 12-man leagues, and they compete throughout the season. Then the champions from each league move on into the quarterfinals, then semifinals, and then it's crowned an ultimate $1 million champion in the end. And so, being that it's such high stakes, these are very good live rankings for running backs. Being that there's such high stakes, these are people who are paying good attention to what's going on in the football world. And of course, they want guys who are going to make it most of the season, get them points right now. So we can use these rankings to help identify values for our dynasty rosters, especially if we are competing this season, because we are going to be talking old man strength today. And so let's get right into it. We'll start. I've got the top 75 running backs that were taken in the most recent draft. These FFPC drafts are 20 rounds long. And so there's plenty of running backs to go through here. I have divided them up into tiers based off of where they were selected. I'm going to go in the order that they were selected. So with the first tier, we have, of course, CMC up at the top, Bijan, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor. Now, I've identified this as the top tier because I think these are the six guys who could all potentially finish as RB1 this season. CMC, of course, with the greatest odds of that happening, just based off of the volume last season, the strength of the 49ers offense. We're all projecting CMC to have another monster season. And, well, he isn't exactly young, right? He's 28 years old. So being the number one redraft ranked player overall shows you that people aren't afraid to use old running backs to get points. So I've also identified another guy in this, and he's been screaming up the draft boards in Dynasty, in redraft, and that is Saquon Barkley, the new running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Saquon finally gets a good team to play on. He finished RB1 back in his rookie season when he got tons of passing volume from dump offs from Eli Manning. That's right, Eli Manning. And now Saquon joins a Philadelphia offense that's got a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who likes to push the envelope. He loves to run as many plays as possible, lots of passes. This will give Saquon a good opportunity to increase his receiving volume, target share that is necessary for him to potentially finish RB1. What it'll really come down to for Saquon, in my opinion, is A, staying healthy, of course, and then B, how many dump offs does he actually get from Jalen Hurts, right? If he can see over 60 receptions this season to go along with upwards of 15 touchdowns, possibly, then he has potential to challenge CMC for the number one running back. And for this reason, people are catching on to it, have started moving him up the boards. As you can see, he was picked fifth at the running back position in this latest FFPC draft. And so Saquon definitely is on the rise. I would definitely go out and kick the tires if you're looking for a stud running back. Um, you never know. The Saquon owner may not have even looked at his team since the rookie draft, may still be hanging on to him, but may have changed his mind right now and leaning the other way. So maybe he's looking to get rid of him. Saquon's a great buy right now. I was ecstatic to get him in the sixth round of a startup way back in March. This was right after he signed with the Eagles. Uh, and so there's just a lot of great opportunity here for Saquon. And he isn't that old, being just 27. I mean, you could definitely see him live out the length of his contract with the Eagles, which is 3 years. And so there's just a massive opportunity for Saquon to ride into the twilight of his career, somewhat like CMC has done out in San Francisco. Next tier I've got is players, the running backs that were picked 7th through 10th. We've got Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, and Travis Etienne. Now, I've identified Derrick Henry here. Of course, he is going into his age 30 season now with the Baltimore Ravens. And people are not shy about jumping onto the King Henry Baltimore Raven bandwagon here. As you can see, he was picked 8th at the running back position, right between Kyron and Devon Achane. Devon Achane. And now I am not high on Kyron. I think he's someone who benefited from volume and just situation last season with Cam Akers' injury. Kyron was able to slide into a massive volume role there with the Rams. But with Henry right behind him, I would definitely be leaning more towards taking Henry over Kyron. I like Achan as well, who of course is still young. But Henry, I mean, the guy could easily fall into the end zone a dozen times. The offense for the Ravens is great. They had their first season with Todd Monken last year. Lamar showed that he could run the offense well. He passed a little bit more. Now this year, I don't know that the passing volume is going to hurt King Henry. I mean, the Ravens still are a run first team, even with Todd Monken there. And even if Lamar decides to throw it a little bit more this season, he probably himself will run it a little bit less, maybe a few less goal line carries, especially with Henry now there. I'm sure that's why the Ravens look to add Henry to maybe lessen the goal line load from Lamar. And so I see great things for this season in particular from Henry. We'll see. With Henry, it's basically a year to year prospect. But I mean, I've seen him go this off season for ridiculously low prices. I mean, a couple of thirds in some instances. So if the guy who had Henry in your league is now not contending, he's a definite guy you want to acquire now rather than wait until August when the majority of your redrafts start and people see that Henry is so high up on the board, then they go back to their dynasty team and they're like, oh, geez, I could use him. Well, go out there and try and get him now before it's too late and you got to pay like a first rounder for him. All right, moving down to the next tier, we've got running backs 11 through 15. They took Pacheco at 11, Rashad White at 12, Josh Jacobs went 13, Alvin Kamara at 14, and Joe Mixon at 15. Now I want to talk about Kamara and Mixon. So Alvin Kamara still with the Saints, still was able to post a monster season last year fantasy wise, despite missing the first 3 games because of his suspension. And so then we've got he had just a ton of dump offs from Derek Carr last year that pumped up his volume, his just attempts in general, and he scored. Like I said, I mean, I can't remember what. Depends on the league format and how many points per catch you were getting, but he was easily a top 10 running back last season. And I don't expect much to change. The Saints don't look like they're going to be a contender this season, but they continue to use the credit card on their roster. So they have an old team, yet they don't really look like contenders. So they're going to be trying to win. And so Kamara is still going to be out on the field as long as he's healthy. He will be the main guy. I know a lot of people are high on Kendre Miller and his prospects with new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak liking to smash the ball up the gut. You could see Kendre Miller get a few more opportunities that way, but uh, with the limited amount of weapons that Carr has through the air, other than Chris Olave and then the deep threat of Rashid Shaheed, still leaves the middle open for Kamara. There isn't, I mean, yes, Juwan Johnson is there, but he hasn't really made that step up into the next uh, tier of tight ends like some may have hoped. And so Kamara still is the guy who gets the work over the middle. So I still like Kamara. Drafting him, I'd take him in redraft, as well as maybe buying him in a certain situation where you need extra points from the running back position. You can get him cheap. Joe Mixon is the one I'd really want to talk about. I would have Mixon ahead of Kamara in redraft personally, just because I like his touchdown upside. Now with the Texans traded for him this offseason, then went ahead and gave him a 3-year deal. So you can see Mixon is part of the Texans' plans for now and the future, at least the next couple of seasons there. And with the addition of Stephon Diggs, the Texans' offense looks to be strong. And I think that Mixon is in line for a lot of goal line opportunities. I see him doing similar to what he did last season with, not the greatest efficiency with the Bengals as far as yards per carry, but the Texans have a decent offensive line. They can run the ball. I mean, they made Devin Singletary fantasy relevant last year, so I'm sure they can continue the same with Mixon. Next up, we have running backs 16 through 20. And with those, we have Zamir White, James Cook, James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson, and then Kenny Walker. And so in this little group of 5 running backs here, we've got James Conner, who went at running back 18 in this draft. So people are still on the James Conner bandwagon. I mean, even with Trey Benson being drafted and knowing how rookies do tend to step up near the end of the season, Conner still went 18th. I mean, this was after Ramondre Stevenson signed his deal, and Conner still went ahead of him. So you can see, I mean, James Conner is just the little engine that could, and he keeps going. As long as he's healthy, expect him to keep the job in Arizona. Now, Conner has missed 4 games each of the last 3 seasons, and so that tends to be his MO. So when Conner does go down at some point this season, it will really come down to how well Trey Benson does in those games. Now, I don't see Trey Benson as a full-time 3-down back. As you may have heard in my previous pods, I've said how I compare Trey Benson to a previous Florida State running back, Devontae Freeman, who did great with the Falcons. He had an RB1 season with Tevin Coleman in the backfield. So I don't see Trey Benson completely taking over for James Conner. So even if Conner goes down for a few weeks, he will come back and probably still be the goal line back in an improved Arizona Cardinal offense. I see great opportunity for Conner to not disappoint. So if you can get him cheap, great buy for you. Next up, we have a massive tier that I separated here, picks 21 through 40 at the running back position. Now, the reason for this being such a massive tier is there is such variance within it. All of these backs are in line for sure work in with their teams, but you have a lot of split backfields here. So I'm going to rattle off these names quick and then identify the ones that are older that present value. So at 21, the 21st pick at running back off the board in that draft was Nick Chubb, then Aaron Jones, then Raheem Mostert, Next up at 24, Jalen Warren, uh, David Montgomery, Jonathan Brooks, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, and Zach Moss at 30. Then we had Austin Eckler at 31, Tajay Spears at 32, Tony Pollard at 33, Javonte Williams at 34, Chase Brown at 35, Devin Singletary at 36, Blake Corum at 37, Jerome Ford at 38, Marshawn Lloyd at 39, and Zeke Elliott at number 40. So the ones I want to touch on here most notably are Chubb, Aaron Jones, Raheem Mostert, Austin Eckler, and Zeke. So first off at 21, Nick Chubb going. That's quite a surprise to me. I don't know yet. We don't know yet if Chubb will start the season on the PUP list. Of course, Nick Chubb had that devastating injury last season, and our prayers are all out to him, and we hope that he recovers from it. But word is not out yet on whether he will be there to start the season. I actually see Jerome Ford as a great value. Now at 22, though, Aaron Jones, he will be splitting the backfield with Ty Chandler. And Aaron Jones probably will look to do the same thing that he had done for years with the Packers, and that is catch passes. And so I could see him continuing to score, be close to a top 10 running back. And, he probably will get some of the goal line work there with Minnesota. I don't see his role changing much with the Vikings versus what he was doing with the Packers. So you can probably get Aaron Jones very cheap as well. Then there's Raheem Mostert. The guy just never will go away. I don't know how old he is now, 32, 33 maybe. But he's still in line to be the starter with the Dolphins. And as long as he's playing, like you can't deny the fact that he is going to have good open running lanes. He's a speed demon. That doesn't go away. And so as long as Mostert is healthy, you want him in your lineup. And he's somebody you can easily acquire for a third rounder. Now, moving on down, I identified Austin Eckler. He's somebody who obviously slid down the boards based off his performance last season. Lots of injuries last year. The Chargers struggled to adapt to the new offensive system that Kellen Moore had there. Kellen Moore, of course, has moved on. So has Eckler. Eckler's got a new opportunity now in Washington with a whole new offense under Cliff Kingsbury, who loves to push the envelope there. When he was with the Cardinals, he had the fastest pace of play. Now with Jaden Daniels running the show in Washington and Cliff Kingsbury there, I see a lot of just total play volume there, giving Austin Eckler a great opportunity to catch the ball out of the backfield. I know that Brian Robinson is there, and yes, he will get work as well. That's why they're ranked very similarly. Brian Robinson was at 29, Eckler at 31 here. But it remains to be seen, like how much work will Austin Eckler get inside the 10-yard line. All right. I see him and Brian Robinson splitting touches pretty evenly here. And if Jaden Daniels is able to throw the ball, 550 up to 600 times, who knows? We all know that Jaden Daniels can run the ball very well, so he may take off, thus limiting Eckler's dump offs. But at the same time, if you're running so many plays, there are going to be enough pass attempts there, I think, to get some value out of Eckler. Eckler is somebody you could probably get from a disappointed owner last season for pretty cheap. And then finally, I want to touch on probably my greatest value in all of fantasy football right now, whether it's redraft or dynasty, and that is Ezekiel Elliott. He's at number 40 behind the likes of Marshawn Lloyd, Jerome Ford, Blake Corum, Devin Singletary. I've been getting Zeke in just about all the startups I've done this offseason and looking forward to grabbing him in redrafts coming up. Zeke is down there right next to Zach Charbonnet is the next running back on this list. I mean, Zeke's the number one running back for the Dallas Cowboys right now. That's right. The Dallas Cowboys, who were the top scoring offense in the league last season, not the Chiefs, not the Bills, not the Ravens. It was the Dallas Cowboys. And so the Cowboys haven't lost much on offense from last season other than Tony Pollard. And Zeke's going to slide back into his first and second down role that he had for many years with the Cowboys. Of course, he may have lost a step, but that doesn't mean that the Cowboys will just run the ball 0 times. I mean, even if they only run the ball 25% of the time, that still means 200 carries for Zeke. And if he's able to at least get, I don't know, 3.5 yards a carry and then fall into the end zone 10 times, you're still looking at a top 20, 25 running back there. So I just don't see the miss in value here with Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, I would take him ahead of Austin Eckler. I'll say that, who has to split with Brian Robinson. I'd take Zeke over Zach Moss, who still is a question mark whether Zach Moss and Chase Brown, who's going to get the main touches there in Cincinnati. So I love Zeke as a buy. Go out and kick the tires in your league, definitely, to see what you could get him for. Then the next tier we have is a little smaller. It was Zach Charbonnet, Gus Edwards, Trey Benson, and Jalen Wright. Gus Edwards is there. I don't love him as the option in LA. I do love J.K. Dobbins, who's down here at number 49. J.K. Dobbins, he at 49 went a little bit ahead of where he's ranked. Many sites have him down in the 60s still, based off of his just massive injuries that he's incurred over the last couple of seasons. But between Dobbins, the aforementioned Gus Edwards, and then coming up, we've got Kimani Vidal, the rookie 6th-rounder from Troy. Dobbins still is the most talented of those three backs. Gus Edwards is getting older; he's age 29 now, but he is familiar with the Greg Roman system, having played under him in Baltimore. So it's a very muddled backfield, but if I were to bet on one of the three to potentially bust out, it would be J.K. Dobbins. Kimani Vidal could definitely turn it on at some point in the season, but I don't think he gets the first crack at being the number one running back. I think they will give J.K. Dobbins every opportunity, as long as he is truly healthy, to be the number one back. And so I think that, new head coach Jim Harbaugh wants to win now. He's not trying to come into the NFL and rebuild something. So he has overhauled the roster on offense. They went ahead and with the 5th pick took a tackle. They didn't go wide receiver like many hoped, so that Herbert could have a great new receiver option. Nope, they waited on receiver. They took Lad McConkey later. They still have Josh Palmer there, but neither of them are true alpha number one wide receivers. You're still looking at a team that's going to be pounding the ball, and somebody has to do it. And like I said, I think J.K. Dobbins will get every opportunity to be the first main option on the ground for the Chargers. Going further down, so we're in the tier. I have picks 45 through 66. We also have Clyde Edwards-Helaire here at pick 54. Now, I do see Isaiah Pacheco as the main dog in Kansas City, but if he doesn't hold up for a full 17 weeks, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the clear handcuff here, and he may still get into the end zone when Pacheco is healthy. I mean, the way the Chiefs like to mix and match players, find matches, you could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire sneaking into the end zone a few times from maybe in between the 11 and 20-yard line when the Chiefs are operating there. I see once they get inside the 10, Pacheco will probably be in. But Again, massive upside for CEH if Pacheco were to go down at all. After that, I identified Antonio Gibson with the New England Patriots now. The Patriots have a whole new offense coming with a whole new quarterback. They may start out the season with Jacoby Brissett, who's familiar with Alex Van Pelt's offense, having played under him in Cleveland when Brissett got to start 10 weeks for the suspended Deshaun Watson. And so the familiarity there, I think, will give Brissett the nod to start the season, at least. And then at some point, Drake May will take over. But in the meantime, Antonio Gibson's a great receiving back. All right. He's going to get points regardless of Ramondre Stevenson's new contract. Antonio Gibson provides mismatches out of the backfield. He can catch the ball and get by linebackers. And then, of course, if Ramondre Stevenson were to miss any time, Gibson would see a much increased volume load. And finally, my last old man power I've got is Dante Foreman down at number 68 of the Cleveland Browns. Again, this plays into Nick Chubb's health. If Nick Chubb isn't able to start the season, expect to see Dante Foreman getting a lot of the work on first and second down, and then probably keeping Jerome Ford in a similar role that he had last season and was very successful at. So I could see Dante Foreman being a real sneaky value early, especially early on in the season, and then on later if Nick Chubb isn't holding up health wise. So there you have it. I've given you some great values at old man running backs to go out and try and kick the tires on. Uh, it is dynasty. And so the running back position tends to be lumped into this mold where, oh, you got to get out a year early rather than a year late. But yes, you may have done that with your first or second running backs. It all depends on your build. If you build your strength at wide receiver and you have a lot of nice young wide receivers as the core to your team, you can go and pick up these old man running backs nearly every off season. Like you could pick up 2 or 3 of these guys that I just talked about for second or third round picks. Go ahead and use them this year, and then turn around and do the same thing next year with whatever older running backs are available out on the market. People want picks to draft shiny new rookies. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, even in this game of dynasty, we're still playing to win, and points are what help you win. And old running backs get points. If they're on a team, they're on a team for a reason. Okay. Even if they're a backup, usually the third running back on a roster is reserved for someone who can play special teams. And many of these older running backs, they don't play special teams. All right. Maybe Raheem Mostert can, but I know that Nick Chubb doesn't play special teams. I know that James Conner definitely doesn't play special teams. Derrick Henry doesn't play special teams. Okay. These guys, J.K. Dobbins doesn't play special teams. All right. These guys are there to carry the rock and pound it up the middle and fall into the end zone. And that's what gets you points in fantasy football. And that's what I'm here to tell you. Go get those old guys at running back. Once again, thank you for joining today. The Birdhouse brought to you by Choice Sports Cards, your number one choice in buying and selling sports cards. Thank you for joining today. Peace out.